right, well, hello everyone. My name is Meg Haller. I am the Pilot Grants Coordinator here at CTSI. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. I also just want to let please shout out at any time if you can't hear me or if there's something technical going on. I'd love to know so we can fix it. So please don't be shy if something's going on to just unmute and let me know. But we can get started. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about our pilot grant program and the pilot funding opportunities that we have available right now. So first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the West Virginia Clinical and Translational Science Institute as a whole, just to give you a little bit of information if you don't know about who we are. So we're funded by the NIH CTR Award, and really our mission is to increase the research capacity to improve the health outcomes of West Virginians and Appalachians as a whole. And in doing that, we establish research partnerships among our partner institutions and our collaborating CTSA institutions. So we are an academic home and catalyst for clinical and translational research, and we target specific priority health areas that are our focus areas, but we do fund outside of our focus areas. So some people think, oh, I don't meet your focus areas, probably wouldn't fit with my research, but we do fund outside of our focus areas. These are just our priority areas. So we have 6 of them: addiction, emerging epidemics, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, chronic lung disease, and cancer. The agenda for today, I'm really just going to talk about our current funding opportunities, eligibility for our pilot grants, budgets, application process is where I'll probably spend the most time. And then I'll talk a little bit about tips and our other CTSI services that we offer. And I always like to leave a good amount of time at the end for questions, but feel free if something comes up and you want to ask a question, you can go ahead and ask. I'll start out with eligibility. So it's not limited to just WVU investigators. Principal investigators must hold a faculty or faculty equivalent position at one of our partner sites. We have partner sites with Charleston Area Medical Center, Marshall University. You must hold a primary appointment in the School of Medicine, West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine, and all campuses of WVU. So right now we have 3 funding opportunities available. We have our open and our launch, which are our 2 larger opportunities, as well as our smaller funding opportunity, Jumpstart. Our open is our primary developmental funding opportunity for clinical and translational research, and it is $50,000 for 12 months for basic science research, and then 24 months for projects that involve human subjects. Our larger opportunities require letters of intent, and our LOIs for both launch and open are due June 28th, and then full applications for those who are invited are due September 7th. Our launch is, like I said, another one of our larger opportunities, and it is more of a specific RFA. It provides proof of concept funding to accelerate the translation of intellectual property. And that is $50,000 for 9 months, and it follows that same letter of intent and full application schedule as open. Our jumpstarts are our smaller funding opportunities, and these come out twice a year, while our larger one, open and launch, come out once a year, but our jumpstarts do come out twice a year. And they're to obtain critical data typically needed for a manuscript submission or provide needed preliminary data for a larger grant application or even a resubmission. And these are $10,000 for 6 months. So they're very focused, smaller scale projects. And we do not require letters of intents for these. And the full applications are due July 12th. Here's some other funding opportunities that are not currently available that you may see come around though throughout our cycles. So our bench to bedside in our last funding cycle, we released this one, and it's really where a basic scientist and a clinical investigator are paired together doing bench to bedside research, true to the name. And it is $50,000 per year for 24 months. And we release these in alternating years. So since we just recently released it not too long ago. You won't see it around probably for another year or so. Our other one is rapid response, and this one really came about during COVID. We released COVID-19 pop-up funding, and we really wanted to have a mechanism in our back pocket, just in case something were to happen as emerging health issues come up. We want to make sure that we have this there and are prepared. So this mechanism is released as needed. So there's really no schedule for it, and it is $30,000 for 12 months. Now I'm going to get into the application process. And by doing that, I'm going to go right to our homepage of our website and show you how to get to the full RFAs and kind of go through the RFA with you of the process. I like to start from our homepage, just so you can see the way to get there, because it takes, a few clicks to get to where you need to be. So if you go to our website, WVCTSI.org, you'll land here, and I happen to be a star on the web page today. And then you're going to go, I'll go back to show you what I clicked on. I forgot to say it. So the resources and services tab up here is where you're going to click. You can always search things in the search bar too, and it'll usually get you somewhere. And then you're going to go down to research funding, and this is where the pilot projects program lives. All of our open requests for applications are always located here, and you need to click on them because sometimes they're a little past, but I leave them up so that reviewers and I can reference people to them kind of in the middle of the whole process that they're out. So sometimes dates have passed, but they're still here. So you definitely want to click on it and make sure and look at the dates. I just want to do briefly before I get into the RFAs, kind of what lives here on our page, because there's a lot of information here. So this is where the video today will go up. My old one from our last cycle is up right now, and it'll be replaced with this one. And we do that every time I give an information session, but I just slightly change the slide deck every time to match the current cycle and what's going on. And sometimes some of our requirements change. But for the most part, you can always find a video on here that's relevant to our application process if you're looking for guidance. Also, my slides will go here. And then I have an RFA information table that gives all of our funding programs and when they're released, on kind of what kind of schedule and how long and the amounts, just for everyone's information to see that. So that's there on our website as well. Our pilot forms, templates, and resources. So that's an important link that I'll get to later. And then over on this tab, we have all of our RFAs here again, our pilot forms, templates, resources, conflict of interest. So if you think that you may have some sort of conflict with your application, you can check out some information and guidelines there. Also, another fun tab is our funded projects tab. So it shows our past funded projects. And this can be helpful for some people just to get an idea of some of the projects that we funded in the past. Like I said, we do fund outside of our focus areas. And I think sometimes this will help show that, because we have, funded a wide variety of projects. So you can always come on and kind of skim that and see some of the projects that we have funded in the past for our varying mechanisms. And some of the mechanisms on here, like our small grants, have been retired. We turned small grants into jumpstarts. So some of these mechanisms have been retired in our new cycle, or our new funding cycle. So the names may not be the same, but it'll still give you an idea. Now I'm going to go into our RFAs. So I'm going to open up the open RFA. All of our RFAs are pretty similar. All of our funding opportunities really follow the same application process. Obviously, with our large and smaller ones, there's slightly different requirements on page limits. You're going to have more content pages for the opens compared to the jump starts and things like that. But we use the same forms and they follow the same format. So we go back to the top. So this is our open RFA. Up at the top, you'll have all of the deadlines and information, and then it'll get right into the required letter of intent information, because for open and launches, we require those letters of intents, and you can find the LOI template there. And our LOI template is pretty brief. So you're just going to fill in all the information. If you have two co-PIs, you can put, the name. If you're doing co-PIs, you can put the name, comma, and then the next name and do it all down the line. And just make sure, you mention that both of you are PIs on the project. You're just going to check these boxes, and then you're going to include a bio sketch for all key personnel on the project, and then project abstract, project specific aims, and project description. So it's really, really brief and simple to do. But if you have any questions about the LOI, you can always reach out to me. I'm not going to talk too much about the LOI. I'm just going to talk more about full applications and that process. So there's all kinds of information here. I really advise you to read everything on our RFAs. They have a lot of information, but most question that you could have is usually answered in the RFA. But I'm going to focus today on the tables. So table 1, this is where we really get into the nuts and bolts of what needs to be in the application, and it goes by section. What needs to be included in that section and what form you need to use. So we use NIH PHS forms. So for these, you can click on the NIH PHS tab and it'll say which one. So for our face page, we say use form page 1. So you can click PDF or Word and open it up and complete it. Now I know there's a lot of empty boxes on the face page that you may get a little confused by, which is okay. For our face page, I have another link to it where I highlight, which I can show. I'm going to show that after I go through this, but for the most part, it's all NIH PHS forms, and we'll tell you which one. So there's different budget forms. So you want to make sure you look at which one we're asking for in that RFA. For this one, we're using form page 4, which is what we use for all of our budgets. So make sure you use the right budget page, and we're not asking for you to use all of the NIH PHS forms. So here you can click, I think there's a button where all the combined forms you can click on. And some people do that and end up doing more work than we require. So we don't require all of these forms and all of this information. So sometimes people end up including more information than we need. So just make sure you pay attention to which forms you need to have in there, and don't make yourself do more work that's not needed. So, going through, it'll show you face page, which NIH PHS form. A lot of them, you're using the continuation pages. For our opens, it's 6 pages total for your approach and research strategy. And for jumpstarts, it's 3 pages total. And it'll tell you each sections you need, what needs to be in there, and make sure when you're doing your research plan and everything that each section has a nice, appropriate, easy to read header for each section so that reviewers can easily find each section they're looking for, because they're going to want all of these sections, background, hypothesis, significance, innovation, approach. They want to, they're going to want to know all that information. They're going to want to be able to find it pretty easily. You have your references, disclosures, if you have any, budget and budget justification, bio sketches. Make sure you're including bio sketches for all key personnel on the projects. I know I get that complaint from a lot of reviewers in reviews where someone was listed in the application, but there was no bio sketch for them. So they weren't really sure what their role was in the project, or, if they have the experience to be able to do what was said they would do in the application. So you want to make sure you have all bio sketches for all key personnel in your application. Letters of support. So you need a letter signed by your immediate supervisor acknowledging their support for the project, and percent effort should be clearly stated. For our larger opportunities, 10% is required. For Jumpstart, that's not required. But percent effort should be clearly stated. There's also a final checklist you can go through and check off, to make sure that you have included all the forms that you need to include. I recommend going through that before you submit to make sure you have everything you need in there. This goes in depth about the budget and what is allowable and unallowable costs. And then I'm going to go down to the additional content as applicable section. So this section is if if yours is human subjects, or if you're doing animal research, there's some extra components you need, and you want to make sure you include those. For human subjects, we require that you use our human subjects template, which is linked here. Well, it links you to our pilot forms and templates page, and then you can click on the human subjects template form, which is there, which I'll talk more about that form in a moment. Oop, I might have lost my RFA. There it is. Okay. And then everything is really linked, the forms that we're asking for in some way. Next is the PHS Inclusion Enrollment Report. This one is tricky. Whenever you go to download it, it usually says there's an error. It won't allow you to download it. You need to save it to your computer and then open it. And usually it opens that way. I don't know why it is tricky. It's tricky everywhere. We try to open it. So we just recommend to make sure that you download it and save it under your computer and then open it. And it usually works that way. If you're having any issues though, and you can't get it to work, just email me and I can send you a Word version. But the PDF version is just better because it kind of does the math for you and makes it a little bit easier to fill out. So that's for human subjects protection. You want to make sure you include those. If it's a vertebrate animal project, there's a section that you need to include for that. If it is a clinical trial, so for jumpstarts, our smaller projects, clinical trials are not allowed. For our larger, they are. So you want to make sure if it is a clinical trial that you're, submitting an open or a launch and not a jumpstart, and that this includes a little bit more information that we need. So you would fill out the protocol template as well. Compliance. So I need city certificates in the applications. If you're doing an animal or a human study, there's specific city certificates I need for everyone listed on the application. So, all keeper, anyone that you have listed on your project, we need a city certificate for them. I know it's, it can be time consuming and difficult to pull it from everyone who needs it, but that is something that needs to be included in your application. A lot of people assume that, I have access to these things to be able to see the city trainings, and I do not. So that does need to be included in your application. If you are an ESI, you need to include a mentorship agreement plan. If you have prior CTSI or IMBRI funding, you want to make sure you include information on there that's all in there. It's a resubmission. There's some guidelines there that you would include. So this is just kind of like the extras of the application in that part. And then so that's really the RFAs. These tables are kind of what will tell you the most about the nuts and bolts of what needs to be included in the application. Also, at the very end of the RFA, there's instructions on how to submit through iLabs. So this can be sometimes a difficult process. So this will give all those instructions on how to do that. If you're from WVU, you would, go this route. If you are from a non-WVU partner site, then that you would go this route. So there's different instructions depending on where you're coming from. If you have any issues with submitting through iLabs, please just let me know and I'm happy to help. Okay, now I'm going to take back to our funding page from there and show you our pilots forms and templates and resources form, because this will have, even though everything's linked in the RFAs, this will still have everything here as well. And sometimes in the RFA, it will link you back to this page to click on some of these. So like, for instance, here I have an example of a face page here. I have highlighted the sections that you need to complete because you don't need to complete all the sections. You don't need to have a signing official sign. That confuses and stresses a lot of people out. You don't need to fill out those sections. I only need you to fill out the highlighted sections. So hopefully that alleviates some of that stress of needing a signing official or anything like that. That is not necessary. Anything that's highlighted is what I need you to fill out. And we have our mentorship agreement plan for the early stage investigators, links to the PHS forms, submission checklist, our human subjects template, a decision tree for NIH clinical trial definition. So if you are unsure if your project is a clinical trial, you want to make sure you do this to know, because there's different requirements if it is or if it isn't, and you're ineligible if it is for Jumpstart. So you want to make sure you're not applying to a Jumpstart with a clinical trial. So if you're questioning, you can always reach out to me and I can help you with that. There's also this little question tree that can be helpful as well. We have our protocol template, our inclusion enrollment report, and then how to combine PDF file instructions. So those are just some things that are in our file forms, templates, and resources. But if you're ever struggling to find a form, or we say something we need in the RFA, but you can't seem to find what we're talking about, just reach out and I'm happy to help. Now let me go back to the presentation. So this is just, I kind of already went over a lot of this, but this is just kind of a reminder of what is required for all projects. That's kind of like the extras. So you need to make sure you have those bio sketches, like I said, for all the PI and all key personnel, as well as city certificates, and that letter of support. And then these are as needed. So if you have a human subjects project, then you need those little extra components, such as the inclusion enrollment report, the human subjects template. If it's animal study, you need to have the vertebrate animal section, as well as proof of IACUC submission, and a mentorship agreement if you're an early stage investigator. So all of these things are included only if you fit the checkbox of, if it's a human subjects, animal study, if you're an ESI. So these are just for those specific things. We do not require IRB submission at the time of application, but we do require IACUC if you're doing an animal study. This is that human subjects template form I was telling you guys about. So you will get a question. It's kind of like a question tree up here. And if all of them are answered yes, then your project is a clinical trial. So that would make it ineligible for Jumpstart, but still eligible for open and launch. If you do not answer yes to all of them, then it is just a human subjects, and you only have to fill out up to 3.2. If it is a clinical trial, then you need to complete the entire form. Some things about our budget, as just kind of like, everything is listed in the RFA. There's way more information on what's allowable and unallowable, but these are just some things I wanted to highlight. As unallowable, we do not allow faculty salary, but there can be 10% for PI on open and launch are allowable. This is 10% of the total budget, not 10% of their salary. Indirect costs, student stipends. So we can't allow student stipends as like an NIH role, but we can do hourly pay for student workers. Some things that are allowable and used for travel needed to complete the study, materials, supplies, equipment, patient incentives, non-faculty personnel salary, and publication costs, conference travel. For the publication costs and conference travel, I usually don't recommend. Obviously, make sure your conference falls within the window of your study period. That's really important. For publication costs, I don't always recommend putting these in for our jumpstarts, because jumpstarts are only 6-month projects. So usually in that span of time, you have not, you're not ready for manuscript to be submitted, and you're not at the point to paying publication costs. So just be careful if you're doing a jumpstart and putting that in there. Just remember that 6-month timeline. Some of our funding priorities. So like I said, just because these things are our priorities doesn't mean, we fund, we only focus on these things. These are just some of the priorities that we give a little bit of a deduction off of your final score during the review process. So for ESIs and our clinician-led proposals, projects that utilize the PBRN or community engagement strategies. So, if you're utilizing the PBRN, make sure you're putting that in your proposal, and it so that we know that you are utilizing it and can give you that deduction. Partner institution PIs, and any of our research, if your project falls within our research priorities. A little bit of insider tips of, what are reviewers looking for? So really, I've noticed future directions. So do you have any external application plans after this project? So you're proposing this project, but what's the next step? These are pilot projects. So, what is next is really a big question. And when that's not addressed, reviewers are kind of saying, okay, is this going to, what is going to happen with this project? Is it going to have results that are going to lead to something? So you want to make sure you're showing future direction in your application somewhere. Feasibility is also something that's really important, especially with our jump starts. These are only 6-month projects. So, in your proposal, if you're saying, we plan on spending 6 months with recruitment and then doing 2 months of evaluation and yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, well, this is only a 6-month project. So you want to make sure what you're proposing fits with the RFA and the funding announcement. You want to make sure your project fits in that timeline and that you're not proposing something. And I know some people are applying for multiple things, and sometimes they may, put something that worked for another one and may not work for this. So you want to be really careful about that when, I've seen in a lot of applications when they're saying this is a 3-year project and ours is only 2 years. So you want to make sure that it's what you're proposing is feasible in the timeline of our project periods. Consultations with CTSI services. So we really do recommend that people have a consult with our bird core. So that's our biostats and epidemiology and research design core. They're really helpful. They can give power analysis and everything like that. They can help with data things. They're really, really great, way outside of my expertise, but we always recommend to consult with CTSI services. If you're doing a clinical trial, to consult with our clinical trial center of excellence, even if you're just doing a human subject study. So we really, really recommend that to be helpful before application. Publication track record. So you want to make sure if you don't have, a very robust publication track record, you want to make sure someone on your team does. So, where you may be lacking somewhere in your application and you're saying, I'm going to do this, but you don't have someone on your team who has the expertise in that, you want to make sure that, every hole or every gap is filled. So when a reviewer is looking, they know that everything is proposed can be done with the personnel that you have in the project. Appropriate mentors, that kind of goes along with that, and grantsmanship. So reviewers get the RFAs, they know what's required in the applications, and if you're not including all of that, they know. And also, you just want to have an organized applications. I can't tell you the amount of times I get submitted applications that still have track changes or comments or things like that, that clearly, it wasn't given a last look through. You want to always make sure it's given that last good look through. Reviewers I see comment all the time, and with there's too many spelling errors or it's disorganized and a lot of grammar mistakes, and it just kind of shows if you didn't give it that last look through, if you didn't really look and make sure everything was in order, that's noticed, and it shows disorganization, and I have seen people be docked on scores for that. So our Principal Investigator Academy Idea Labs, if you looked at the RFAs, you may have noticed that there's a little requirement up at the top with those that PIs conducting clinical studies that plan on applying for a pilot grant are required to present at one of our Idea Labs. For our larger opportunities, open and launch, you have to present an Idea Lab before you submit a full application. So if you've been asked to submit a full application, you have to, before that submission date, you have to have presented at a PI Academy Idea Lab. And so I really recommend that even before you've been asked maybe to submit a full application, to go ahead and do an Idea Lab to kind of get that burden off. And these are super helpful. I mean, you go and present your project, you talk about any questions or concerns you have about your project, things that you're worried about and would like some feedback on, and you can receive feedback from our PI Academy panel of experts. They offer really great insights and feedback that you can take back to your proposal to make sure you have a really, robust application. And it's kind of like a pre-review before being reviewed by reviewers. And for our jump starts, we require it as well. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind, and you can contact Debbie Lee, our training manager, to set up an Idea Lab date. The sooner the better. We have limited dates for Idea Labs, and we really don't like to stack a bunch at once. We tried to do one person per. So really, as soon as possible, reach out to Debbie Lee. If you are doing a project that involves human subjects, make sure that you're reaching out to set up that Idea Lab. They're really, really helpful. And I think it's a good way to kind of get ahead of some concerns that reviewers may have in your application. Before I go through our core services, I just remembered that I forgot to show you guys my example application. Let me, went away. Oh, no, it's still there. Okay. So I have an example application that usually I forgot to pull up a little while ago, but I just remembered just to show you what all the forms put together kind of look like. of what needs to be included in your application. So, this is that face page that I was telling you about. And then you have your second form, page 2, that includes the project summary, relevance, and then it also has the key personnel listed here. So that's what I'm saying. Anyone listed on your application, this is the place where they would be listed. And then this is an example of a jumpstart. So it has those like content pages for your content and then your references. And then next is your budget. So this is that form, page 4, I believe, for the budget. And then we have a budget justification, comes right after the budget. Next, we have bio sketches. There's only 2 people listed on this application, so it's 2 bio sketches. Make sure it's an NIH bio sketch. NIH is constantly changing the requirements of bio sketches to make sure you're keeping up with what they have. Really good instructions. If you just type in NIH bio sketch, they have examples and good instructions on there to help you if you've never done a bio sketch before. Next, this is a human subjects project, so they have their human subjects template, which we give. Make sure you delete this comment before you turn it into a PDF. It is a comment to just help you fill out that 3.1 to make sure it kind of explains everything that needs to, but a lot of people forget to delete the comment before PDFing, and then it gets a little wonky. Next would be that letter signed by your immediate supervisor acknowledging their support for the project. And then this is that inclusion enrollment report I was talking about that is sometimes tricky to download. This is just kind of like, I like to say, an educated guess on your enrollment. So this is if you're doing a human subject study. We typically recommend using US Census data for estimates, as this form is meant to be reflective of your study sample plans and expectations, but it does not constitute a formal commitment or to an unchangeable sample size. So we know you cannot, this is not in stone. We know you cannot guess or predict how you are going to recruit. And I apologize if you can hear my dogs barking. And down here though, in this, you want to make sure that this total matches the total that you plan on recruiting in your form. Next is our city certificates. So you would, anyone listed on the project, make sure you have a city certificate for them and make sure that it's not expired or very close to expiring. This one's getting pretty close. So just make sure with that, and that you have the right curriculum group. So if it's human research, you only need one. Sometimes people supply me with a bunch of city certificates for one person. I only need one for each person in the human research curriculum group. If it's human research, if it's animal studies, then I need one from there. Okay, now let me pull back up my presentation. Now I can talk a little bit about our other core services. So we're not just a pilot grant program. CTSI is way more than that. We have a lot of cores that offer a variety of services, and they offer them to all of our partner institutions. So, this is just a few bullet points of some of the, services that we offer. We have study design, biostatistics, biomedical informatics. We have our clinical trial center of excellence. They offer study coordination, regulatory support, and all kinds of really great things through them. We have our practice-based research network, Project Echo. Our professional development team offers grant writing groups, editorial services, a lot of really great programs they put on, and our external proposal development services. We have our PI Academy, which is really, really great. So a lot of great services we offer. I recommend going to our website and going to that resources and services tabs and looking at everything that is offered. Research funding that I showed you is just one small part. We offer so much more. And I really recommend checking that out. Also, if you're ever curious if we offer some sort of support and you're not sure, always feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to answer you. Or if I don't know the answer, I will definitely connect you with someone who does know the answer, because we offer so many services and some people aren't aware of all the services. So if you're ever thinking, I wonder if they, offer this, please feel free to reach out. If you do have a pilot grant, all of, our services are free of charge to you. So you don't want to include in your budget any of CTSI services, because if you got the grant, it would be free of charge to you. Resources. So becoming a member, it's really easy on our website. You just click the Join Now tab at the top, and it is free of charge. And we really try not to bog anyone down with emails. We send one email a week, typically on Thursdays, our newsletters, and sometimes there will be like an extra special one if we release funding or something like that. So you'd be notified every time. So this is my contact information, but now I just want to open it up for any questions.
Thanks, Meg. Question, is there a minimum number of people that have to be on the application?
No, there is not. And for a pilot project too, some people like there's not a max or a minimum, but you don't want to put like everyone under the sun on your project. I think some people get nervous and they include a lot of people that it may not be necessary, but there is no minimum either of who, sometimes we get pilot projects that it's just the PI on the project and maybe one co-I, or sometimes it's just the PI.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
May have mentioned this just now. I may have missed it, but so for this 50,000 versus 10,000, the different application, is that the length of the projects? I mean, the application length is required the same way or different?
So they're the same pretty much application. You're using the same forms and everything. The only differences you'll kind of see in the RFA is the page requirements. So like content pages, for the open, we require there you can have up to 6. For Jumpstart, it's only 3 content pages. And then also there's some different requirements between them, like of budget things. You can ask for PI support on our Jumpstarts, and just like little minor differences that you'll see, but they do follow like the same application kind of process as far as forms go.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do you have any information about the rate of acceptance for the different types of grants?
So I get asked this every time, and I never have like a straightforward rates because it differs every time. It really depends every cycle on the amount of projects that are in the fundable range. So I can, like, for instance, I can say, for Jumpstart, we might get 10 applications and fund 4 of them. Jumpstart, we typically fund more than open. So for open, if we say get 15 applications or so, then only 3 may be funded. Or if a lot are in the funding range, sometimes we open up for more. So it just really depends on the funding range. Most of the time we don't have to make too difficult decisions as far as who is in the fundable range. Most of the time gets funded, obviously, unless there's an excess in the fundable range. Then things are a little different. But there's no set, like, every time we're going where we say, like, this is the number we're going to fund for this.
Thank you.
Hey, Meg, I might have just missed this, but could you explain the Idea Lab presentation again?
Yes. So our Idea Lab is so it sounds kind of daunting sometimes, but it's really a simple process, and Debbie is really great to work with. So you would reach out to Debbie if you have a project that involves human subjects. Then we require that you present at one of our Idea Labs. It's a virtual, you can do virtual, or sometimes Debbie, you can go into the office with Debbie and present, kind of like a hybrid. Some people come in person and some are virtual, whichever you want to do best. And she'll send you a slide deck ahead of time. So you'll meet with Debbie. She'll have an expectations meeting with you of kind of what it's like, answer any of your questions. She'll also give you a slide deck to fill out and then return. that you'll use for the presentation. And it's really to just kind of go over your project, talk about, maybe you're concerned about, is my timeline okay? You may be worried about the number of people you want to recruit. Is this too many? Is this too little? You can talk about some of the concerns that you may be having about your project. And we have a really great panel of experts, from all different disciplines, who are really great and offer feedback and try to answer your questions, or talk about things they may have noticed in your project that you might want to focus more attention on or think about an alternative strategy. So it's really something that's helpful. The requirement there, so for our larger applications, before a full application submission, so for open and launch, before you submit your full application, you have to have presented at an Idea Lab. And for Jumpstart, it is required also to present an Idea Lab. So we just recommend, as soon as possible, if you have a human subjects project, reach out to Debbie and try to set up a time.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Apparently my dogs have some. So this has been recorded and it will go up on our website. Hopefully if the recording comes out okay. I seem to always have issues with recordings, but hopefully this records fine and I can get it to our communication team, and they usually can have it up in a few days depending on their workload. So if you want to go back and watch, and also the slide deck will get uploaded as well on the website where I showed you. My past information session is already up there in my past slides, and like I said, they don't change or differ very much between presentations. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help as best as I can. I will let you know that I will be out of town the 21st to the 27th. And so that's right before that 28th due date. And I will be checking my emails and, responding, but it will be a little periodic. So I do recommend, if you have any major questions or want to meet with me, to try to do that before the 21st. But that I don't panic. If you have questions, I will still be checking my email and answering them. Just may not be as timely as I usually am with email responses. Well, that's all I have. If no one has any more questions, I want to thank everyone for coming, and have a great rest of your evening.